Hello and welcome to episode 100 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. This week, Toronto, Canada is installing the world's largest solar-powered generating wall. They decided to go ahead with the project after checking with New York to make sure this would be considered cool.
After a year of talking about it, James has to finally buy an EV. Will he snap under the pressure and just buy a gasoline Hummer?
The UK is already seeing less emissions because of EVs. It's so significant you can now smell a gin-soaked party at 10 Downing Street from anywhere in London.
And a U.S. petition to end the sale of built-to-fail bicycles is gaining traction. While many thought this podcast was also built to fail, we have now reached our 100th episode.
All that and more on this very special edition of The Clean Energy Show. Brian, I'm nervous. I have a nervousness about me. I feel extra pressure on the show this week.
Because it's the 100th.
It's a special show. People have been talking about it, you know?
But yeah, I noticed you put up some festive decorations to celebrate.
Yes, I did. We have a generous donation from Regina Car Share Cooperative who wired us $20 to add to our celebration. So I bought a balloon.
Nice.
Due to the chip shortage, balloons are very expensive now. So
well, yeah. and no helium, right? Like helium is out of the question.
Yeah, helium's out of the question. The hot air has to come from me. And look at this. I've got cake.
Whoa. How come I didn't get any cake?
Because you're in a different part of town, and nobody really cares about you.
No,
it's good.
I feel so left out.
It's cream cheese icing. It's got little Oreos on it, too, and some chocolate drizzle on a vanilla cake.
Oh, man.
I'm just going to do this the rest of the show. You talk. Uh-oh, went down the wrong pipe. That's bad.
Well, this could be a way to go out.
It's a good cake, though. Good cake.
So I just wanted to give a shout out to my friend John, who was looking to buy a Hyundai Ioniq 5.
Yeah.
But they told him he couldn't get one until summer 2023. And I thought, wait a minute, didn't you just tell a story exactly like this last week on the show?
Yeah. My God. This is legitimately a problem. Anyway, thanks to Regina Car Share Cooperative for your generous donation, which almost killed me. I have a friend who, he's ordered one. He says he's getting in the spring.
This spring,
he says. So I don't know if it's a different configuration. Maybe the lower end configurations are coming later in 2023. Also, the Olympics are on. Do you have Olympic fever, Brian?
Let me just check my temperature. No Olympic fever yet.
And have you seen any clips? Have you seen anything at all?
Well, I suppose tiny little bits.
Yeah, I've got a clip here from Jimmy Kimmel. He's making a joke about it because it's weird. There's this ski jump they had to put for some reason in the middle of this old industrial site, which was like a steel factory with all these giant smoke towers there. And yeah.
The Olympics are happening. They had to make all the snow for the games. They had to make it. It's artificial snow. And the venue for the women's freestyle ski jumping competition, not only is the snow fake, it looks like an abandoned power plant, primarily because it is an abandoned power plant. Those are cooling towers from an old coal-fired steel mill. It seems ironic to hold a Winter Olympic event in front of the reason we don't have winter anymore.
So it's a weird site. It's bizarre what the Chinese are doing with the Olympics because they're trying to be environmental, but I guess they needed somewhere with a large water supply to pump in this fake snow and to add chemicals to the snow. So that's just one thing that's going on in the world right now. Brian, there was something upsetting that happened in the local EV community. A guy named Tyler, which was basically one of the leaders of our local EV community, gave up his Tesla because of the heat pump issues we had in Canada. He's one of the guys who was stranded on the highway in minus 30-degree weather. Very dangerous and had to get towed. Happened multiple times over Christmas and since then. And if he's doing it, if he's giving up and buying a Ford Escape or some other piece of crap, I mean, I don't, it's just one of those sad moments.
Yeah, that's too bad.
And I'm not happy about it. There's a lot of people in Canada who are complaining to the federal government transport department about those heat pumps. And I think Tesla they could have handled that better. And it's too bad that happened. Now, keep in mind, people, this has nothing to do with electric vehicles working in cold weather. It's this one hiccup, one piece of equipment that has nothing to do. That's just like the heat pump add-on. Yeah, so we'll get to that later. Brian, it's been 2 years as well. It's also our second anniversary since our first show from the bomb shelter together in person. Oh, how naive and bright-eyed we were back then.
It was a different time.
Different times indeed. So, I don't know. How do you feel like things have come in the last 2 years with a pandemic? It's been entirely pandemic almost since we started the show.
Well, yeah, but I think mostly about the advances in clean energy, which, once we really started paying attention by, having to put out a podcast every week, it's been startling and remarkable. Like, just so many big things have happened in the last 2 years, and we're just barely getting started. Like, it's, things are ramping up. We talked about on the first show of making this a limited series podcast going to the year 2030. And I think that's still the plan, because I'm going to want to retire for a second time, I think, in 2030. But we're sort of 2 years into this decade, and it's huge and remarkable and massive changes, but still, so much more to come.
Next year, I think I'll order something liquid, for the celebration.
Well, I think champagne would be traditional, but I don't know, $20 doesn't get you much for champagne.
And I will say this, I think the podcast has helped me through the pandemic. It was nice for me to have a regular commitment to something, because otherwise I wouldn't have. And, it just, it made the pandemic better for me to be able to do this. And now we've done it, and we've got a fairly good audience that's growing and growing. So, yeah,
I would second that and say that it is really great to just have somebody to talk to every week, because I can't afford weekly therapy. So I have this instead.
Not with retirement coming, no. Yeah. But, the top podcast on Patreon makes $500,000 US a week.
Whoa, a week?
No, I'm sorry, a month. A month, but it's still a lot.
That's a lot.
So I thought we should have maybe done a true crime climate podcast.
Hey, now there's a winner of an idea.
Who's the criminal who did this to the climate? The answer is always Exxon.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So it's a whodunit where everyone knows who did it.
Sure. And we both could have been, on our own island somewhere by now. So new data is suggesting that the EV market is taking off with 130,000 cars sold each week globally. And that's the equivalent of the sales for all the year of 2012. 1.2 million EVs are sold in the US in 2022, and that's up from 650,000 in 2021. So it's doubled.
Massive. That's massive.
That's not bad for a pandemic. Canada zero emission EV sales reached 5.6 in 2021. That's up from 3.8% in 2020. And 2020 was only a tiny gain over 2019 from 3.1 to 3.8. And now that seems to be taking off. And even where we live, in the middle of nowhere, people are starting to buy EVs, and those numbers are starting to kick up too. So where's the inflection point? What's your latest thinking on the inflection point of where EV sales hit the S curve and start really taking off?
How about right now?
Well, I'm looking for your expertise. I say no, because of something I'll get to shortly in the show, and that is because they're hard to find any EVs. Yeah, and that's the problem.
That's the problem.
A major problem. And as many models as there are, they're still heavily tilted towards the luxury segment. And even all the models that are coming out in the next 2 years, I was looking, they're all in the luxury segments. And trucks. And I don't really need a truck. Not really. I mean, if the price is right. So battery electric cars were 9% of sales in the European Union in 2021. And that's mostly driven by CO2 targets. And the Tesla supercharger map, we recently found out, grew 35% in 2021. That's pretty good, but is it enough, Brian?
Well, yeah, it's always going to need more. It's always going to go faster. And there was also a story, they increased their number of employees by, I think, 40% in the last year. So they're growing as fast as they can.
How much do their sales grow in 2021? Do you know?
87%.
So maybe the supercharger map, maybe that's not enough then.
It's probably falling a bit behind where it should be, but, they're rolling them out pretty darn fast.
Okay, the latest poll from Abacus Data Canada on the percentage of Canadians who say the clean energy sector will be very important to the Canadian economy in 10 years increased by 19 points in the last 14 months. So there's some movement there. This is one of those things that I think is important. We're trying to gauge where the public is, because we need cooperation from the general public, not just the people who listen to our podcast, to get on board. And that seems to be moving. That needle seems to be moving. There's been some huge climate things in Canada that make you think that there's just no question about it. Stuff is happening now.
No, the weather events, extreme weather events are just crazy. Plus, by now, pretty much everybody knows somebody who has either solar panels or an electric car or both. It's quickly becoming mainstream.
Corporate procurement of clean energy in 2011 was 0.1 gigawatts, and last year was 31.1. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a big change. There's some controversy about, corporations overestimating how much they're really putting into this. But they contracted as much clean energy last year as all the capacity that there was in the entire year of 2008. Last year, companies contracted as much clean energy generation capacity as all the stuff that was already installed in the world in 2008. Tesla, the stock, TSLA, has gone up 9 times since we started our show, Brian, if you looked at the recent peak of the stock. So you had some stock when we started the show, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. The recent peak, or where it is now? It's
the peak a couple weeks ago, before the downturn.
No, well, that's remarkable. And 2019 is kind of when I started in the Tesla world.
Good time to start. And yet you have no cake. So here's the deal. I'm getting stressed out. You can maybe tell by my voice that our Prius lease that was 5 years. Okay, I'll just remind people, we've got a Prius hybrid and a Nissan Leaf. The Nissan Leaf is for the city. It's old. I bought it cheap. It's already paid for itself. It's from 2013. It just works in the city. It's basically my car to get around. My wife has a car for her work as a social worker. She sometimes puts car seats in it. Has to be in perfect condition and, insured to, $1 trillion or something for her to do this. And that lease is up. And Brian, when I got the lease, I thought 5 years, that's too long. There'll be EVs everywhere. I'll be mad that I can't go get an EV. And it hasn't happened. Why? Yeah. Tell me why.
No, I don't know why, but it was now 5 years ago, pretty much exactly, that I put the solar panels on my roof. And at the time, I put in an electric car charger because I thought, well, I might as well get this done. And because electric cars are going to be just around the corner. And that was 5 years ago. And then I waited 3 years, nothing moved that much. And then I finally sort of caved and ordered a Tesla, which I wasn't initially planning to do because it's a very expensive car. But, I just got tired of waiting. And I thought they were around the corner 5 years ago.
Okay, so my lease is up in, I believe, they're calling us, okay? They're putting the pressure on. They don't have anything on their damn lot. There's literally nothing there. But, so we could buy it out for nothing now or wait for maybe a month. We're just waiting on the final details of that. But it's down to the final minutes, Brian. And I have to get real. I've been talking about this for the last year on the podcast. This was coming up. Mm-hmm. Well, now the day has arrived and I'm not very well prepared. So I'm going to talk about it on the show because it's a struggle for, some of our listeners are off buying EVs, but so here's the deal. I went looking at what a used Prius of my vintage would sell for, and it's shocking. In fact, I'm going to ask people to sit down. Don't be walking around. Don't be on a treadmill if you're listening to this. This 2017 Prius, where we are in the Prairie region of Canada, is selling for the sticker price used. The sticker price. Basically, it has not gone down in volume.
Used car prices are through the roof right now. It's ridiculous.
And that is because of chip shortages, right?
Yeah, just overall, I guess, shortage of supply.
So they can't make new cars, so the old cars go up in value. But that's ridiculous because the buyout price of my Prius is $11,000 something. Let's call it $12,000. And I've seen it listed for $28,000.
So you pretty much, you got to buy it out. I mean, you'd be stupid not to,
I have
right?
to buy it out. I'm sure they're going to try and trick me not in buying it out, because if they can make 10 grand, I mean, that's good for them.
Yeah,
so
they could flip it for a huge profit. So you got to beat them
now I'm
to
nervous. I'm nervous I'm going to meet the deadline. I'm not going to meet the deadline. We do have a line of credit, so we can just write a check and just, we don't have to apply for a bank loan. We could just put it on a line of credit for now. But the problem is finding a car. So that's this big segment I have for you now is my journey in looking to EVs and how it has not been successful. So my friend Mike Knobloch, he just bought a Ioniq 5 that's coming in the spring. I know other people driving them around, so they must have pre-ordered them a long time ago. That's out of my price range. God, I love the car though. I love it. Mm-hmm. Next to a Tesla, I just really like that car. I've seen it in person. I've touched it. So my payment is only $310 a month. We put $3,000 down, and there was really good financing, which is why we have a new car instead of a used one. So I could justify about $410 a month without being any poorer, because I figured the gas savings would be about that. So we have a $2,500 plug-in hybrid electric vehicle tax here in Canada and a $5,000 rebate at the dealership. And it pisses me off because I'm shopping for cars now and they're listing them with the rebate in, which is disingenuous.
I don't like that.
Oh, that's a good price. And then I can take $5,000. No, you can't, because we secretly took it off and didn't tell you. Drives me crazy. So yeah, the used market is nuts. And I've had people on Twitter telling me that they've bought Leafs like mine and they haven't gone down in price. And I looked and I don't think mine's gone down in price. So who buys a used car for $10,000 and has it maybe even go up in price? Because the reason I got it so cheap is because they went down in price so fast because of the battery reputation.
My Tesla is 2 years old now. I could probably sell it for maybe even more than I paid for it, which is crazy.
I'll give you half. It's my final offer. Okay, so let's start with the obvious one. The obvious one is going back to the Toyota dealership and picking up the Prius Prime, which is a plug-in hybrid. So it's the same as my car with a bigger battery that you can actually plug in. You can't plug in my car. And that will give you 25 miles or 40 kilometers of range. Now, I've test driven this baby in minus 17, and it gets a lot colder here. Didn't care for it because the engine kept coming on. You don't buy, the dream is to buy a plug-in hybrid and just have the EV mode and never need the gas mode until you go on a highway trip.
Very rarely, yeah.
It would not be that experience. And plus, it's very wimpy in its EV mode, more wimpy than even the gas hybrid mode, because it wants to consume that. If you press on it too fast, you'll kick in the engine just for that reason. So that pisses me off. And they don't have Android Auto.
What?
Toyota, this is a quirk of Toyota.
That's crazy.
Where they only have Apple. And we have Android phones, my wife and I. And I want Android Auto for the first time. I've never had it before.
You deserve it.
Thank you. Thank you. That is true. I do deserve it, don't I? So yeah, there's that. Plus, we've had 2 Priuses now, and do we really want another one? I don't know. Of course we would want a pure EV, but with the used market being what it is, and it's crazy for EVs too, the best deal would be for us to buy actually new if they sold it at MSRP. And took the $5,000 off and had a really good financing deal. Now, here's the thing. If I can buy that car and sell it on the used market, it's had 2 accidents, by the way. And by the way, listeners, if you have any thoughts and advice to help me, please let me know, because I'm desperate for help. I'm really struggling with this. It's had 2 accidents. One was a rear ender. So it wasn't our fault, but it was more than a fender bender. It's like, the back hatch had to be fixed. And then we clipped a deer in Wyoming, and that was it wasn't a frame issue, but it was still 2 accidents. So that might bring down the price. And do I really want to sell it? I mean, could I even stomach selling it to some poor bastard for a sticker price from 5 years ago? I mean, there's people who are taxi drivers and Ubers who are getting hit by the gas prices. I'm thinking that might have something to do with it. You know, the gas prices right now for that particular vehicle and vehicles like it. And by the way, the Chevy Bolt was listed as Canada's Residual Value Award winner. So the Bolts that go on fire and we make fun of on the show here are actually having the highest residual value for the EV segment, which makes no sense to me because we all know what's happening with Teslas. In fact, you know what the cheapest Tesla in Canada is nationwide that is for sale today?
Tell me.
Guess how much?
Well, it says here on the script, $37,000.
Damn you. Damn you reading the script. Yes, that is 209,000 kilometers or 130,000 miles on that. It is a 2014 Model S 85. And, you know, you'd have to wonder whether the battery's going to last. I mean, it very well could, but there'd be sort of that risk there that it wouldn't at that kilometerage. So that's pretty disgusting to me. So that brings us to the Hyundai Ioniq plug-in. This is not the Ioniq 5, the dream car of James. This is the smaller Prius-like version, which they have a hybrid, a PHEV, and a full electric. And by the way, the full electric is pointless. It's overpriced and has a very low range that is indicative of my Leaf, my first generation Leaf from all those years ago, which we should have moved beyond by now. So it uses the engine to heat the cabin. So if you're running in the wintertime, and we all know winter is half the year here at least, it's going to be running. So, you know, why? That's no fun at all. It has a 1 kilometer range more than the Prius, and that's it. But it's pathetic and pointless.
It's an unsolvable problem.
Then there's the Nissan Leaf, a new Leaf. And here's the deal. We live in a fairly big city where the Leaf guy, the technician at the Leaf dealership, recently told one of our EV members that they'll get EVs certified when hell freezes over. This was a couple weeks ago. Okay, so you can't buy the Leaf and have it serviced and under warranty and the battery checked and all that. You have to go 4 hours away. So Leaf isn't even a doable purchase here, brand new. It's 363 kilometers range. That's 226 miles. Charges slow. And it charges especially slow after 3 highway fast charges. So it really slows down because the battery heats up because they don't have liquid cooling. I'm worried that it would deteriorate in value. So I'd have to get a lease, not a financing. And it's sold out. The national website says sold out. So bucker that. I mean, they've been making these in Tennessee for how many years now? Well, I can tell you, 11 years. They've been making it for 11 years in Tennessee. And why don't they have enough? Probably the chip shortage. So that's a problem. The Aria has only 346 kilometers of range, which I find a bit low for an Arctic climate.
Yeah, that's not great.
The website implies they have way more orders than they will have in stock anytime soon. So that's not an option. The Kia Niro PHEV is interesting. It's a bit bigger, but it looks like an SUV styled subcompact SUV. It's actually smaller than the Prius. There are some respects where it's bigger, but it's actually overall smaller than the Prius, even though it's an SUV and the Prius is considered a toy car by some people with trucks. Mm-hmm. So it has 40 kilometer range and it is 34,500 minus 2,500, and it has Android Auto. But the pisser there is that some safety features like radar cruise control are optional and you have to go up a level. I really like radar cruise control and I would not want to give it up for it because it really helps you, unstress about things. It just takes care of everything. Like it's just,
I love it. It's great.
A used Bolt might be an option, but they're hard to find and they're overpriced. The seats are bad until the new one. I'm thinking for me, it could be a big problem as a huge guy. And I found one actually in Kipling, Saskatchewan. It's about 140 kilometers away for $33,000. And it's got trees outside and grass around it. So it's been there for a while. Why, I ask? It only has like 9,000 kilometers on it or something too. So the Bolts, they sold without DC fast charging. It was an option. Did you know that? I forgot about that.
Yeah, I forgot about that too.
So I'm betting that this doesn't have a DC fast charging option. It's got 9,000 on the odometer rather. And I could go down there and look at it, but I'm betting that it's doesn't have DC fast charging, which won't fit our needs because we need a highway car. And by the way, since there is no chargers, there's not enough chargers here, we need a fairly big range, right? Because we want to make it to our sister city up north, and that's a bit of a problem. Now, a new Bolt is 417 kilometers range, 259 miles, which is kind of getting towards what your car is, your Model 3 standard range, and it takes about an hour to charge on the highway, however, so that's not great, but I could live with it because we don't do that many highway trips and we could just plan ahead. 38,000 starting, but it sounds like we might need some features added to that for cold weather as well. So the Ioniq EV is not useful. Like I said, the Nero, interesting, but hard to find used, actually. It's really expensive for a used one. It's worth buying new. That's how crazy the market is. It's insane, and I don't know when it's going to change. The Kia Soul, which you almost bought, right?
Yeah, we talked to our sales guy at Kia and said, hey, we'd like to buy this new Kia Soul EV that was just refreshed about 2 years ago. And they said, no, we can't sell you one of those. So we went out and bought a Tesla.
Oh, really? Well, I haven't seen any in town, so maybe they're not selling them. 383 kilometer range, which would probably do. That's 238 miles. A bit tough to make that trip to our sister city. It's only a couple grand less than the competition, though. Like your other cars, like your Ioniqs, Ioniq 5, and all that. And then there's the EV6, I guess they just announced the pricing for that. From Kia, that's $45,000. It comes into the threshold of beginning a rebate in Canada. The VW ID4 is not available here apparently yet, but it's interesting that the website, actually the local website for VW, which is the same people who own my Toyota dealership, they have a bunch of things listed, like it'll go from this town to this town and where we live. And so they've actually personalized it for us, which is kind of cool, which makes me think maybe they're serious about it.
But they don't have any to sell you.
None here. And they're giving it basically to the places that have ZEV
mandates.
The policies that make them sell zero emission vehicles. So it's got 400 kilometers or 250 miles of range. The heat pump is included, which it's not on the Ioniq. You have to upgrade the Ioniq by a couple grand, which doesn't help. And also, as they say, the Ioniq has the battery heater when you get the heat pump. So no battery heater, then you can't use in Canada. I'm sorry. It's like buying a car without a block heater, which most people don't know what it is, but look it up. You people are so lucky not to live. If you don't have a block heater in your car, I envy your climate, I think. But still, $510 a month. And that's if I had 10 grand from the Prius profit, the magical, 10 grand of Prius profit. I would still have to pay $100 more. However, it has that heated windshield. Oh, that's sexy. That's so sexy. But here's another problem. A lot of these things are rear-wheel drive. Like the Ioniq 5 is rear-wheel drive too. That's a problem in Canada in the snow. Yeah,
my car has rear-wheel drive. I don't mind it. As long as you have good winter tires, I think it's fine.
Well, the Ioniq 5 then is delayed. Apparently, it would be a delay for me. Apparently, that would be the one I would go for. Actually, Hyundai has better financing rates, half the interest rates of other people. But we're not even into, car sale season. But we'll even have sales this spring because the weather. Or not the weather, the chip shortage, the car market craziness.
Oh yeah, no, the lots are empty these days.
So yeah, it would be like $513 a month. I don't know, you're thinking, James, why aren't you in tech or something? Why aren't you making lots of money on computers or something? Well, I'm sorry. It pains me to spend this much on a car to begin with, right? You had a hard time ethically doing that. But how did you get over it?
That was twice as much as I'd ever spent on a car.
So it's tough to do that if you don't need it. I mean, I'm not saving the world by doing it. I just would prefer an EV. I don't like gas cars anymore. I hate them. They suck. They're like a huge compromise. I would love to get into an EV and have it programmed to preheat for me in the coldest of winter days and the hottest of summer days to cool down. So, and here's a couple EVs coming in the next 2 years. The Chevy Equinox EV is supposed to start at $30,000 US, so that might be a possibility. There's a list here at ev-canada.ca of all the EVs available in Canada, which is pretty much similar to what it is in the United States as well. It's always changing, but really when it comes down to it, Brian, after 2 years of talking about this, it just seems like there's not enough EVs and they're not cheap enough.
We're no closer.
And it doesn't look like we're going to come down in price because of batteries for a year or two, at least. And that's, plus, there's a problem of buying just buying an EV that's the first year of a model. You don't want to buy the first model year of anything.
It's not ideal, no.
Anyway, that's my situation.
Okay, so BlogTO is reporting that there's a new building going up in Toronto that'll have the largest solar generating wall structure ever. So this is known as Building Integrated Photovoltaics, or BIPV. And these panels can replicate different exterior finishes on buildings, so they can look quite different. And this is something I feel like we've been hearing about since maybe the 1970s, that, hey, one day we're going to have buildings that generate their own power. Yeah. Anyway, it's still kind of in its infancy after all these years, but finally started to take off. So there's a 7,000 square foot wall on a new building being built in Toronto. This is the largest building integrated photovoltaic installation so far. It's in the Etobicoke area of Toronto. And they expect it to generate 90,000 kilowatt hours of energy every year for the building, slashing their carbon footprint, obviously. And the cost is apparently okay. This is, building exteriors are kind of expensive anyway. So This is apparently not that much more and should pay for itself by the energy that it generates. And then in a related story, Electrek had this story. The state of Massachusetts in the U.S. is putting solar on those concrete sound barriers that you see by the highway. This is one of the ugliest pieces of urban infrastructure you're ever going to see. So putting solar on them isn't going to make them any uglier, and not, maybe slightly prettier, just because the idea of them is a little bit more appealing. But, there's thousands of miles of these ridiculous concrete barriers built between freeways and people's houses to cut down on the noise from the freeway. But so Massachusetts is going to put solar panels on these. And they won't be flat. They'll be sort of sticking out at an angle on the walls. Mm-hmm. Probably help with the sound as well, like added sort of sound, sound deflection or something like that. But it's kind of similar in size. This first one that they're going to do to that building I was just talking about, 802,000 kilowatt hours annually based on this first installation. But, if this is successful, and I see no reason why it wouldn't be, this could be replicated in so many places. There's just so many places we could put solar, and we should. Yeah.
That's interesting. It's kind of like the Tesla roof. When you have to make a roof anyway and put on, when you do it from scratch, it's cheaper than just adding, solar panels to a roof, because it's part of the building materials. It makes it more doable that way. That's interesting. There's been some examples around the world. I think in Nordic countries, in Europe, I've seen some things. It's probably not very cost effective rate when they were doing it. But this is, and it's interesting where we live in the wintertime, the ideal angle of a solar panel is almost vertical. Yeah. I mean, it's getting right up there. So I thought of putting solar panels on the wall of my house, because I have a giant wall without windows where the old solar thermal was located when the house was built in 79 and taken down. It'd be kind of ugly, but I thought about doing it, and then you actually get quite a bit in the wintertime and not so much in the summertime, though.
Yeah, if I wanted to build a house that was off the grid, you'd probably have to have a variety of angles for the panels, because you would definitely be short of power generation in the winter. But if you had some of them that were pretty much vertical, maybe that would work.
So if I was a nutball living on off-grid,
and this is assuming that you're not a nutball.
Yeah, I'm pretending we're not, and I was living off-grid waiting for zombies, I think you would build them for December 21st, which would be vertical where we live, or not quite vertical, but near vertical. You just build, substantially more of them, because you'd be wasting. It wouldn't be giving you the top in the summer, but because you're off grid, you need to build for the worst time. Yeah.
Put them all at that angle.
This is not most people. Most people just are powered by the grid and interchanging and selling the back to the grid as the battery. So yeah, that's what you would do. I've always thought about that. And then also you'd have the advantage that there would be no snow that could accumulate on them. It would basically fall right off or close to it. So that's, cool. Interesting. And this is a significant event, the fact that somebody's actually doing it and saying that it's going to be cost saving. So that's
finally
a big moment in clean energy history.
This is the Clean Energy Show.
All right, Brian, electric cars in the UK apparently are cutting emissions by 11.2% already. That's another one of those things where we don't know when it's going to happen. You know what's going to happen. And now there's some evidence of that sales of electric cars are rising in the UK, which has led to a drop in carbon emissions from the transportation sector, because they have policy in place, and we have a very lackadaisical policy which needs to be increased. And, there's still a long way to go as the EV revolution takes hold in the UK. They showed electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids are only about 1.3% of the current fleet of vehicles that are driving around in the country. So that's got a long ways to go. That's because, road transportation is 25% of their carbon emissions. So it's a big thing to hit, and they've got to do it. I was reading this thing about aviation fuel. It's not taxed. It's the most polluting thing in the world, the sector, but considering the size of it, and there's no tax on aviation fuel. And the closest thing they have to a tax is actually in the United States. Because they tax it if you leave the continent, but you get it rebated if you don't.
No, and there was a story I read. It's not on the list of stories for today, but every country deals with oil and gas companies differently. And there was an example that, like in Norway, the government takes something like $21 per barrel of oil, but in the UK, it's like $2 a barrel or $3 a barrel or something. And in fact, there's some instances where, because of course they also have generous rebates and incentives for oil companies. So there are some energy oil companies in the UK that pay negative tax. They get so much subsidy.
That's, I'm just going to choke on my cake if you don't mind.
Watch your blood pressure too.
So Vermont has a gas utility that is actually doing something positive.
Yeah, I thought this was an amazing story. I read it in the Energy News Network, and it's a fairly small utility. They only have, or is it here? They have only 55,000 customers, but it's the only natural gas utility in Vermont. Yeah, they've decided to help their customers get rid of their natural gas water heaters, which sounds counterintuitive, but turns out they're not idiots there in Vermont. They're very smart, and they can see the writing on the wall. And of course, there's also regulations in place that, Vermont has climate laws. They need to achieve a mandatory 80% reduction from 1990 levels by 2050, which is a long way away. But, they're thinking ahead. And their idea is to help customers get rid of their natural gas water heaters and install heat pump electric water heaters, which they provide. So a lot of people rent or lease their water heaters. So they're basically just shifting a portion of their business, and they're kind of saying, well, we don't necessarily even make that much money from the natural gas we provide to heat everybody's water. So we'll just shift this part of the business to being a rental service for electric water heaters, and in this case, heat pump ones, because those are the most efficient. So I don't see any reason why this couldn't be replicated by other natural gas utilities. So I'm calling on all natural gas utilities to see the writing on the wall. You may not be phased out this year, next year, or even 10 years from now. But if you can replace a portion of your business with another business, like renting heat pump electric water heaters, then you can be around in 50 years. And if you don't do that, then, you won't be around. I'm sure maybe it'll be a smaller business if that's the only thing that you can figure out to transition to. But just a huge hats off to VGS, the natural gas utility in Vermont. I thought that was amazing.
That is a remarkable story. I'm quite shocked by that, especially in the United States. I might have figured in the UK or Europe that might have happened, but that's a very positive story. There are innovators who are forward-thinking. Perhaps they listen to this podcast, Brian, and
I'm sure they do.
They know what's up. They've done their research. They listen to the Clean Energy Show. Unlike the research people that are honking their horns all the time right now in trucks. So I think that other people will catch on. These are the first people. And it's business, man. It's business. You know what? Yay, free enterprise. Because free enterprise is going to save our butts, I think.
And here's the thing I want to hear, because we have a government gas utility here.
Yeah.
And I don't expect them to announce anything like this program anytime soon. But, they need to start making some announcements about how they're going to wind down their company. Like, everybody knows that there are emissions targets in place. So let's hear from the CEO of our local energy gas utility. What's your plan? When are you going to wind down? Is it going to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Even if it's 50 years from now, just tell us, here's the plan for winding down the sale of natural gas.
Not going to happen. They probably have no idea what's going on beyond their little world. Again, they should listen to our podcast because...
Oh, man, they'd be so much smarter.
Oh, wow. People are hats off to people who are coming up with ideas like this because they're thinking outside the box. And those are the people who are going to win in the energy transition. Not the people who are just inward looking. Those are the incumbents who are going to get wiped off of the face of the earth. So that's a very good news story, and we hope to see more of that soon. Coming up real soon, Brian, it's the lightning round, where we'll skim through the rest of the week's headlines, a very popular segment with the feds. So EV charging ports will soon outnumber gas stations in the United States, according to Electric. Yet it won't be enough, will it? In 2021, there was about 180,000 public charging ports in the U.S., and that's nearly one port for every gas station. How do you feel about this, Brian? What's it going to take to satisfy the EV market?
Well, I'm not sure the exact number, but as we've said many times, the main gas station for your electric car is the plug-in at your house, assuming you have a driveway and a plug-in. So we won't need as many electric charging stations as we do gas stations because people will be refilling at home most of the time. But, it's just a race at this point. This stuff is being deployed very quickly, but, is it going to be quickly enough?
But the ideal ratio of EVs to charging station is 40 level 2 ports and per 1,000 EVs. Interestingly, that's what I have at home and you have at home, or 3.4 per 1,000. So that's what there's for DC fast charging. That's what they're saying is the ideal number, according to the people who work on this. I don't know. Is that ever going to happen? Or are we always going to be behind, do you think, in catching up?
It's going to be a decade of transition for sure.
Yeah, but as longer range EVs, that's kind of one of the reasons why you buy a long range EV now is to get past that problem of not having a large enough selection of ports. I mean, for Tesla, it's pretty good. Although you can run into a full charging station rather sometimes during holiday weekends.
So there's been a petition started to end the sale of built-to-fail bicycles. So this was started by...
Is this like built-to-fail light bulbs that we were talking about last week?
Yeah, so planned obsolescence. But this isn't so much planned obsolescence as just cheapness. I don't know. But bicycles, as we all know, are quite expensive. And I've complained a lot, like, really you should support your local bike shop and go down there and buy a bike. But, oh man, they're expensive. But what people end up doing, of course, is then going to Walmart and getting something super cheap. But these are essentially built to fail and in many ways cannot be fixed because of the way these components are put together on the bikes. So there's a Colorado bike group that started this petition to stop built-to-fail bicycles. And so if you want to sign the petition, you can Google that and find it. I read this from the Vancouver Sun when I was reading the Vancouver newspapers and pretending I live in Vancouver. So this petition is sort of taking off in BC, which is a very bike-friendly city, a very bike-friendly province. Lots of bike riding going on there. So bikes that fall apart after less than 100 hours of riding have become the bane of bike mechanics, said Sarah Thomas, shop owner at Our Community Bikes in Vancouver. And she says, we're definitely seeing a higher percentage of bikes coming in that we cannot fix. So these built-to-fail bikes, they have plastic parts or connected pieces that can't be taken apart to be repaired or replaced. Whereas, higher quality bikes, you can always take them apart and, add a little grease and bearing and sort of make them as good as new. So there's this, it makes sense why these bikes exist because I complain all the time about how expensive bikes are, but getting a cheap bike for a couple $100, believe me, is not the answer because many of them only last 100 hours or less and then can't be repaired. This is ridiculous.
I didn't know about the can't be repaired part. I've spent a lot of time hanging out at my local bicycle shop, and I've heard them talk about how they like Walmart bikes because they come in immediately. And they don't make a lot of profit on the sale of bikes because it's such a tight market. Yeah. So they make money off of repairs, and I've helped people buy bikes before, and I've seen one from Canadian Tire that was absolutely atrocious, and the manager and I got into it, and I didn't think they knew anything, but it was BS. It was dangerous. It was dangerous because the chain would fall off. The chain was too big. It was not sized properly. It was like hitting the ground practically. And the brake calibers were not on. So there was two things there. If your chain locks, you can have an accident. And if your brakes don't work, that's important. Especially if you're in a large metropolitan area and you're cycling through cars. So you can buy a used bike or one of those lower price bikes. Just take it to a bike shop and you can upgrade some of the components. Or just have it checked over because they don't assemble them properly. That's one of the issues too, right?
Yeah. They're often assembled in the shop, and if the shop doesn't have somebody that knows how to do it, then... Yeah,
if it's a department store, you've got some kid who, good luck. So in the mailbag this week, Brian, let's see here. I've got a message from Mike who bought a Hyundai Ioniq 5. Congrats on the 100 show, guys. I really enjoy the podcast. Keep on fighting the good fight, and to celebrate, you're welcome to a ride in my Hyundai Ioniq 5 when it arrives in the spring. Thanks, Mike, and I am raging red with jealousy. How dare you?
I would love a ride. Thanks, Mike.
Yes, we should do one of our podcasts from it in the back seat. This is Mike's not a big spender. He's one of these guys. He's about 8 years younger than me, and now he's making his move. He's making his move, his big, bold dad move to...
They cost more up front, but they are cheaper in the long run, so I applaud Mike's financial decision.
So, there was an anonymous person who was on the TikTok, actually. It says, I test drove the Ioniq as well, and the salesperson knew nothing about the car, what a charging network was, or any of the reviews that the Ioniq had received. So it's a big problem, still a big problem. And another listener let us know that the city that we talked about with the funny name that is near us named Moose Jaw, the city is installing solar panels in city buildings to reduce their carbon footprint. So thanks for that. Good for them in the heart of oil country here. So 730 solar panels on city buildings. And
it's a small city, so that's a decent number.
And another guy named Mike, who's a regular listener. We got lots of local feedback this week. Says he's getting solar panels.
Is everyone who listens to the show named Mike? Is that what I'm...
No, it's a different Mike. It's a different Mike. Trust me, it's a different Mike. But yes, I think 90% of the people males are Mike. So a regular listener, he says, getting solar panels on his house soon, and he says, congrats on 100 episodes. Thank you from us here at the Clean Energy Show. The feedback, Brian, drives the show. So if you want to get a hold of us, please do contact us by email, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. And we're on Twitter, and we're raging on TikTok. Clean Energy Pod is our handle. Clean Energy Pod, one word, on TikTok or Twitter. That's also good ways to get a hold of us, at least Twitter is. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, although it is festering in the dust, getting left behind by TikTok. Oh, there's speakpipe.com if you want to let us know by a voicemail. Kids, a voicemail is a recording of your voice, usually done over a phone, but in this case, it's done over a computer. So speakpipe.com/clean energy show. Brian, before we get to the lightning round, I just wanted to say countries in Europe with the most heat pump sales per household: number 1, Norway; 2, Estonia; 3, Finland; 4, Sweden; 5, Denmark. What do they have in common?
They're all northerly countries.
Yes, using heat pumps.
That's fantastic.
Let's do the lightning round. Oh, Nelly, we've gone late this week, Brian, but it's a special 100th episode. Something has to be special about it. It might as well be ridiculously long. So
let's make it 100 minutes.
It's going to be. A federal appeals court last week ruled that Arizona Utilities' Salt River project, which services most of the Phoenix metropolitan area, can be held liable for violating antitrust laws because it charged customers who own rooftop solar panels higher rates. There's a big, ugly mess in Arizona. This goes back to the early days of our podcast where we were talking about this. And now the appeals court has ruled that, the law is in your side, people.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, let's use the courts to fix the climate.
Norway, yes, and I think that's actually what we're going to see a lot more of this year and the year going forward, because it's popping up a lot. Norway, the global leader in electric vehicle adoption, saw plug-in electric vehicles take 90.5% of the share of the market in January of this year. That's up from 80.7% year on year. You thought, well, 80.7, where's it going to go? There's nowhere to go, but it actually went up to 90.5.
And should we expect 100% by a year from now?
I don't know. Norway, tell us. Write us a letter, Norway. Full electrics alone took a record 83.7. That's really good. So they're shunning the plug-in hybrids there. And combustion vehicles were a new low of 4.9%, which is the reverse of what it is where we live. But
yeah, that's kind of wild.
It is wild, and congratulations, Norway. Your public policy actually worked very well. Tesla's tax break request in India gets a stern rejection from an official there. So they're going to have to build a factory, right? They're just going to have to build a factory in India.
Yeah, I'm
someday.
not sure what's going to happen. We've had lots of Indian news lately of kind of lower cost electric vehicles like scooters and stuff like that. And of course, Tesla mostly makes fairly expensive cars. So we've always kind of wondered how Tesla's going to make their way into the Indian market and also high tariffs on imported cars. So, I think a factory eventually, but, possibly even a lower priced, smaller car would be necessary for India as well.
Yeah, for sure. So last year in 2021, the electric cars made up 20% of all new sales in Europe, 15% of new sales in China. I'm disappointed in China, Brian. This is according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, a research group. I always thought China would do better. They were kind of, when we started this podcast, China was kind of taking the reins and going with it.
Yeah, it just maybe hasn't grown as fast as we thought.
And this is big news and little news at the same time. It is and it isn't. Nissan Motor Corporation will end development of new internal combustion engines in all its major markets, except the U.S., where they think they're going to sell some trucks with gas engines. I say, you're stupid.
Yeah,
the electric trucks are going to rock even more than other segments. They're going to just, you don't know what you're talking about if you think that's going to happen, because electric trucks are where it's going to be at.
They're clearly not moving fast enough. And just mention too that Subaru has started taking deposits for their first electric vehicle, still some ways away, but Nissan and Subaru both making some moves towards EV, but not quick enough.
So this would make them the first major Japanese automaker to make such a break that's been done in North American automakers. Tesla full self-driving beta runs into a pole, and what could be the first full self-driving beta accident caught on video. Did you see that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, with some kind of a traffic divider for bikes, but we talked last week, I think they have 60,000 now full self-driving beta customers.
That's right.
In the U.S., which is an enormous amount. And there may have been other accidents, but this is the first one that we know of that's been sort of recorded and sort of publicly put out there, because not everybody shares videos. 60,000 people don't all have a YouTube channel. But I don't know. I think it's remarkable that there hasn't been more than that. We do expect full self-driving accidents, and we do expect full self-driving deaths eventually, unfortunately. But I'd say the record's pretty good so far, and the driver is still supposed to be in control. So technically, this driver running into this pole, it was technically the driver's fault, not the car. But we'll see. More accidents to come, unfortunately.
And it was just a paint scratch. It wasn't anything huge. So. But it is notable. So the Ford CEO says we would rival Tesla right now if we were producing enough electric vehicles. But you're not, are you? Because you
no,
just
they're totally not.
You just recently got around to it. I'd be rivaling Tesla right now if I was producing enough electric vehicles, wouldn't I, Brian? I mean, technically.
Oh, absolutely.
And finally this week, an oil production ship has exploded off the coast of Nigeria. And you know what, Brian? A massive solar explosion is just called a nice day. And that, sir, is the theme of our show and what we're all about. It's been a fun 2 years. We've made a lot of progress. We've got a long way to go. I want to thank all of you for sticking around with us during that time. And that's our time for this week.
Yeah, congratulations, James, on 100 episodes. And we'll see everyone next week.
Congrats, Brian. Bye for now.